Hey, let me tell you a story. Night drapes itself over a glass tower. The lobby is almost empty except for the muted glide of cleaning carts. A polished elevator waits like a metal capsule in a dim aquarium of glass. 6 people step inside with that late-hour weariness that makes strangers keep their voices low. A procurement manager holds a worn toad against her ribs. A courier folds his dolly and steadies it with a shoe. An accountant rubs the red edges of his eyes. A paramedic shifts her stance as if every small space is an ambulance. A janitor rests both hands on a heavy ring of keys. A woman in a gray blazer checks a phone with a cracked screen. The doors seal with a quiet sweep. The car hums upward, then the motion fades between floors. The lights stay on but soften as, if wrapped in gauze, the air turns a shade warmer. Button presses reply with polite beeps and no movement. An alarm icon glows but reaches no one. The emergency phone hangs quiet and deaf. They trade short sentences because speech is a way to claim control. The paramedic suggests slow breathing and counts under her breath. The janitor guesses it could be a locked car for a test. The courier laughs once and regrets the sound. The accountant presses the open button while the procurement manager wedges her fingers into the seam. Nothing yields. The woman in the blazer keeps her eyes on the ceiling and lets silence be a kind of armor. Seconds stretch into something heavier than time. A corner fan ticks. The air smells faintly of carpet glue and old coffee. Outside the tower, the night routine continues with taxis and dishwashers and neon that refuses to sleep. Inside the box, the minutes lose their edges. A small speaker clicks alive. A flat, careful voice fills the space. It is not warm and not hostile. It recites that the car is secure, that the building network is cut by design, that ventilation is managed and limited, that the doors will open once for one person only, that refusal to choose will cost air. Then, the hum returns like a curtain pulled across a stage. Nobody moves for a breath. Then rolls arrive as habits do. The paramedic checks for injuries and sees only a scraped knuckle on the courier. The janitor studies the ceiling panel and notices fresh fasteners with odd heads. The accountant begins to estimate volume and oxygen burn and stops because numbers do not breed air. The procurement manager quietly counts people and time. The woman in the blazer watches the thin line where doors meet the way a swimmer watches the surface. The courier addresses the ceiling and greets whoever may be listening. The paramedic mentions hidden cameras. The janitor points toward a pinhole at the edge of the trim. The voice returns with the same measured tone. It uses first names with easy confidence. It lists habits no stranger should know. A cafeteria sandwich, a half-heard podcast, a stranger helped in a stairwell, a declined Sunday call, a message erased at noon. Thin threads of paranoia weave quickly. The space seems to tighten. The paramedic urges steady breaths. The janitor talks about a manual release, but warns it could jam the car into worse trouble. The accountant suggests a simple vote for who should try leaving. The courier argues there will be no help beyond these walls. The procurement manager says surrender is not an option. The woman in the blazer remains a calm blank. The fan ticks like a metronome set to slow. They vote because voting feels like a rope. The paramedic abstains and says the weakest should go. The courier volunteers with a smile that does not reach his eyes. The janitor offers himself for his knowledge of the building. The accountant steps forward because he trusts in effort. The procurement manager holds back, sensing that the first exit might not be freedom. Finally, the woman in the blazer says she will go without asking permission. Arguments spiral the way they do when fairness is only a story we tell ourselves at night. They speak of lungs and speed and maps and who owes what to whom. The accountant mentions a father in hospice. The paramedic mentions a partner waiting with dinner. The janitor mentions rent and the late fee. The courier mentions stairs he can run. The woman offers nothing of herself. The voice breaks the debate. With a new rule, it claims air can be earned through truth. Each must admit one thing they would rather keep. Stress will be measured. Breathing will ease for honesty. The paramedic calls it a trap. The janitor calls it cruelty dressed as policy. The accountant calls it leverage. The courier compares it to a game show. The woman in the blazer speaks first because the door is her goal. She says she deleted a message that could have saved a job. The procurement manager confesses an invoice error that cost a vendor a weekend. The janitor admits to keeping cash from a found wallet and mailing the rest back. The courier says he lied to his mother about debt. The paramedic admits a face that still wakes her from brief sleep. The accountant says he promised a visit he will never make. The fan hum steadies. The air cools by a hair. The voice acknowledges their effort and repeats that a choice must still be made. It warns them to consider the order of what will happen. Eyes turn to the seam as if it might open into safety. Hope pushes against sense. The procurement manager feels the structure beneath the situation. Rules dressed as kindness. A design that wants obedience to feel like agency. The elevator exhales a small sigh. A brake clicks deep in the shaft. The doors part to a narrow slit. Cold air slips around their ankles. The woman in the blazer moves forward with exact calm. She slides through the narrow opening made by the obedient door. Beyond lies a corridor the color of paper. Quiet and freshly cleaned, the doors meet and leave 5 to consider their air. The calm tone breaks the quiet and reports that the hallway is locked at both ends. It invites patience. It promises a measured path. The courier mutters that promises collect interest. The paramedic steadies breathing. The accountant folds his hands to stop their tremor. The procurement manager studies the small cavity they pried. She maps wires by color and by route. She watches the second lens with the patience of a beer who knows when stock was swapped. She decides the tone reads from a script, and that scripts can be broken by timing. Minutes spread thin. Then the speaker wakes and announces another opening. One person must step out and walk to the red light and wait. Touch nothing. Speak to no one. They choose the janitor because he reads buildings like weather. He nods once and steps through. A receipt falls and vanishes under the seam. The door closes. The fan moves a narrow ribbon of air. The paramedic reads faces and sees confidence then. The courier presses his palm to the seam and says it is numb. The accountant murmurs prime numbers and loses the latter. The procurement manager lets anger harden into focus. She asks for tools, the dolly wedge, the binder clip, the loyalty card, the key ring. The small kit forms and the quiet rebellion resumes. The panel lifts a fraction, a sensor blinks. The speaker warns that interference reduces safety and air. The light dims, the air warms. She does not stop. She mutters that punishment means they are near a seam. The courier forces the wedge deeper. The cavity opens. A cable harness gleams. The second lens tilts. The accountant proposes a bypass. The paramedic refuses sparks. The procurement manager agrees and looks for persuasion instead of war. She studies a magnetic switch along the door edge and smiles without warmth. If the switch reports open while the floor sensor denies a crossing, the controller may attempt a gentle reconcile cycle. They count. On the fourth beat the loop is pulled. The doors drift a finger width. A small draft strokes their faces. The speaker cuts in and orders stop. The procurement manager answers that systems accept anomalies and record them. The accountant notes that logs imply someone above the tone. The tone goes quiet. A new instruction arrives. Whoever leaves next carries responsibility for those who remain. Any mistake will be paid for inside. The procurement manager hears the shape of a threat and accepts the role. The seam opens just enough. She slips into the corridor and keeps her hands open. Behind her the car closes. The box shrinks again. The hallway smells like chilled metal. The floor glows with faint reflections. A red indicator waits at the far end. A camera dome watches. The tone escorts her with instructions. Walk at a steady pace. Stop under the red light. Wait. She obeys the pace and disobeys the spirit. She counts tiles. Notes mismatched screws. She stops beneath the red glow and tilts her head as if inspecting. A shipment. Fresh scuffs crowd a steel cabinet set into the wall. The tone reminds her to wait. She waits. And while she waits, she calculates. The cylinder lock can be bullied. The spring of a binder clip will bite. The intercom carries the paramedics. Voice. The car remains stable. The air is still manageable. The courier asks if she sees the others. She answers shortly. The corridor is blind. The light is only an indicator. The cabinet matters. The tone warns that unauthorized access will be punished. She replies that looking is not access. She bends to retie a shoe and measures the gap under the cabinet door. The clearance will accept metal. She stands and pretends to adjust her tote. With her wrist she hides the motion of fishing the clip from an inner pocket. The spring slips into the keyway and turns with stubborn softness. The door yields a finger width. The tone tells her to step back. She says she is steadying herself. The door opens with the slow care reserved for sleeping dogs. Inside rests a compact graft on the real control. A relay board, a small battery, a recorder the size of a phone. Cables feed cameras and speakers. A thin wire bridges a fire loop to a fake obedience. She understands the missing purchase order. The tone asserts compliance with codes. She answers that compliance systems were less tape. Inside the car, a fresh task arrives. Equal weight on all four corners for 10 minutes. Any imbalance reduces air. The paramedic divides space. The courier braces the folded dolly. The accountant counters with his tote. The procurement manager hears the task through the thin door and understands the mechanism. The box is a scale and the corridor is a lever. She moves a small magnet along the relay case until a status light changes color. The camera dome refocuses. The tone hesitates and recovers. It announces that the next opening will occur. She says she is ready. She is ready for a pivot, not for obedience. She closes the cabinet and returns to the red light. She senses a pressure change as if a distant door breathed. The seam whispers. The car door opens to an obedient slit. The tone allows one exit. The group settles on the accountant because patience and doors are cousins. He slides through and stands beside her. He says nothing. The order still bans speech. She lets her wrist touch his. The magnet passes palm to palm. The tone notices contact and ignores it. Perhaps it is busy counting weight. Perhaps the script forgot wrists. The clip opens the cabinet again. The magnet convinces the relay that the door stands open and safe while the floor sensor still reports closed. The controller tries to reconcile the difference and widens the car door. Inside, the paramedic orders the wedge to brace. The courier obeys. Air holds. The tone tries to speak and spits static. The script did not plan for a beer reading the fine print while walking. The opening grows to a shoulder width. The paramedic sends the courier through and follows. 4. Stand beneath the red light and look like obedience. The tone warns them to remain still. It threatens to cut air to zero. The procurement manager thinks about the fake bridge on the fire loop. Her hand moves into the cabinet and removes the jumper with a motion that looks like a sigh. For a heartbeat, nothing changes. Then the building remembers the law it was born with. There is no siren because someone strangled that path. There is instead a shift of pressure and a deep electrical thrum. Doors on the floor unlock with a chain of soft clicks. The controller drops the private game and returns to recall. The seam holds open. The tone announces that the exercise has ended and that non-compliance will be recorded. The procurement manager does not argue. She says move. They move. They walk, not run. Speed is guilt on camera. The stair door opens with a weight that feels like a handshake. They file down and the building yields to code instead of games. The lobby appears like a cool lake behind glass. The street waits with taxis and late rain. The tone trails them and calls the night a test. The procurement manager chooses a payphone across the road and makes the call that names the device and the address. They stand in the window light and realize survival is the beginning, not the end. Hey, for more descents into places that pretend to be safe, stay with me. Subscribe, share, and return. Some towers only release you when someone outside keeps a light burning.